I'm gonna be giving you guys a talk on some of the updates we've been working on at ENS over the past year. I'm Dean Eingenmann. I'm one of the developers and researchers over at ENS. I guess don't use PDF. So the first thing I'll be talking about is like a year in review, then some of the documentation updates we've been working on recently. Some of you might have heard about EIP 1577. Then about the formal verification stuff we're currently working on or starting to work on. The DNS integration, which some of you might have read about. And then finally, some of the changes to the root contract that we've been working on. So just a quick year in review. Since last EthCC, we originally started with 8 public repositories. We've scaled that up to 34 public repositories, which we maintain. Not all are completely around ENS, but there's certain other things like SolSHA1, our buffer libraries, etc., which many people have been starting to use and contributing to as well beyond like just the ENS team. Last EthCC, we were pretty much 3 employees. That was me, Nick Johnson, and Jeff Lau. That's been changed to 9 employees currently. We started with the support for 1 TLD a year ago, which was .eth, and we now on mainnet currently support 3 TLDs, which is .xyz, .eth, and .lux. We've also scaled from like 25,000 people or 25,000 resolver set function calls for addresses to 44,000 resolver set for address functions, which kind of shows how much usage there is currently. Some of you, or most of you, have probably seen the redesign we've worked on over the past year, which has been updates to our manager, our entire branding. And then we've deployed a fully new manager software, which is like far better than the old one for some of you who might have used it before. So to the documentation, we used to have, up until very recently, completely different documentation, and we're currently working on rewriting everything and making sure everything is documented in complete detail so that people can really understand everything which is ENS. That's been a task which Nick has been working on recently and I think continues to work on so that we really have good documentation. Then EIP 1577, that's an EIP I helped draft together with Nick, which is supposed to make things easier or make hashes easier for crypto browsers to be able to understand whether a website is hosted on IPFS or Swarm so that you can use ENS for websites. What the EIP does is it introduces a new content hash field for ENS resolvers, allowing for better defined systems of mapping names to a network and content addresses. Additionally, the content and multi-hash field are deprecated, so the new resolvers don't contain that. The standard is based on the normal multi-hash standard, where we have a type bit, length bit, along with then the hash of the actual content. This is what it looks like. As you can see, the first section of the entire byte array is the storage system, then the CID version, the content type, the hash function, the hash length, and then the actual hash. That gets encoded into a byte array and then thrown into a resolver into the content hash field. EIP 1577 is currently adopted by Status, Opera, and there is an open task in MetaMask to get it integrated as well. The current issue with MetaMask is that the EIP integration was a community one, so they don't have resources really to allocate to the integration. So we're working on getting a bounty for that task for anyone who might want to integrate EIP 1577 integration. Formal verification. This is like the next project which I'm going to be working on. I'm going to be working on formally verifying the registrar and the new ETH registrar and the new registry in K. That kind of helps us to ensure that functionality is and as we expect it to be. Then DNS integration. So for those of you who don't know about DNSSEC, DNSSEC is the DNS security extension, and what it allows us to do is it allows us to verify that domains exist in the DNS space, meaning that we can validate those certificates, bring them onto ENS, and allow people to claim their DNS names on ENS. The .xyz integration was the first TLD which we decided to do with that, but as of recently we decided to expand that and allow for pretty much any TLD to be claimed. We're currently testing this on Gurley, and last night Nick decided to deploy every single TLD that was possible on Gurley. So for anyone who wants to test it with any .io domain or whatever, Gurley's the place to do it. This pretty much allows us to have 1,349 different TLDs on ENS. So anyone who has a website and wants to accept payments in ETH, you don't need to buy an ENS name anymore. You can use pretty much your normal domain, which you were using anyways, and accept payments to that domain. Then changes to the root. This is one of the main projects which I've been working on over the past few weeks and months. It allows us to take away the exclusivity which the multisig has on the ENS registrar or ENS registry and move certain components over to public functions. For example, like claiming TLDs was one of them. It means that we don't need 4 signatures out of 7 to add a new TLD, but anyone can pretty much submit the DNSSEC proof signature and a new TLD is opened up. This is what it looks like. So previously we had the multisig to the ENS contract, or the multisig owned the ENS contract and was the only one allowed to execute functions. We changed that to being that the multisig owns a middleware contract known as the root, and the root contract owns the ENS contract. And the root pretty much opens up, as said, certain functions to the public so that we don't require those 4 out of 7 signatures from the multisig. That code is currently being audited by Consensus Diligence. Thanks to those guys for deciding to do the audits for us for both the root and the ETH registrar. Then to the registrar, I'm not going to talk about this, hence a question mark, because Chris Remus is going to have a full talk about it later on, and he's going to tell you everything about how the new rent system will work, etc. So our plans, or what's next right now, some things on the timeline is deploying the permanent registrar and migrating everyone. That's something we plan on doing shortly, and Chris will definitely tell you more about the timeline and what the process is there. And then really focusing on EIP 1577 further adoption, making sure that people who are building dApps actually use ENS names with IPFS so that they don't use centralized domain name systems anymore, and they start moving to this awesome tech that we've been building. Thank you for listening. Are there any questions? I guess not. Okay. Thank you.